So Octopath Traveler crossed 1 million in sales. Sort of, because Square Enix and Nintendo UK both jointly announced that Octopath Traveler has shipped over 1 million units. Now, they combined physical and digital sales, which is really cool because we usually don't get updates on digital sales for games that also have physical releases unless it happens to be an indie title. Nintendo usually doesn't give us updates on that outside of their quarterly reports and when they do an update on their website. So it's very cool to see that Octopath Traveler has crossed 1 million units because you only hear news like this when things are going very, very well and way ahead of expectations. And I think that's fair to say for this game because while Bravely Default, another game made by this team back on 3DS, did sell over 1 million units, it took over 2 years to sell 1 million units. This game just did it in less than a month. Now, I've talked about in the past in my impressions on this game that it is better than Bravely Default, in my opinion. You might disagree, you might prefer things in Bravely Default more, and that's fine, but this is also an unmitigated success story because, yes, I think anyone who wasn't a Rabid hater could look at Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle and easily predict that that would be a success. It has Mario in the title. It's a high-quality game, highly polished. No reason for it not to be a success on a Nintendo platform. Plus, the Rabbids have been popular on prior Nintendo platforms. So there's an audience, even amongst Nintendo fans, for Rabid games. So you combine Rabid and Mario together, a tactical game. Yeah, that might limit the sales in terms of its potential, but it's still, according to Ubisoft anyways, sold well. We're not sure how well. Did it sell 1 million? Did it sell 2 million? We really don't know, but well enough for them to continue to support it, release the DLC that we just got, the Donkey Kong Adventure DLC. So I think overall the game has obviously performed well, and it's also helped lead to partnerships like Star Fox being in Starlink Battle for Atlas later this year. Despite the fact it's a multi-platform game, a lot of people are now looking at Switch as maybe that's the best version to get because it has that extra content. It has that R-Wing. It has Fox McCloud in there. It has the ability to try to play the game like it's a Star Fox game almost throughout the entire adventure. So it's very interesting to see that and how that's going to play out later this year. I know Star Fox's audience is somewhat limited at times. I don't know that it's necessarily the biggest IP Nintendo has, but I do think, based on my experience with Starlink Battle for Atlas, that it's a sleeper. It's one of those sleeper games that I really hope a lot of you guys don't overlook. And I felt that way about Octopath Traveler coming in as well. See, I played, both of the demos, the initial prologue demo, and then obviously the big prologue demo that lets you play the beginning stories for all 8 characters, and then you could carry over that data to the final game. And I even got myself the Wayfarers edition. Shout out again, Be Righteous, you're amazing. Thank you so much for somehow nabbing me the Wayfarers edition on the day it released for my birthday. Really appreciate it. The thing is that Octopath Traveler, I'm not going to sit here and talk about how good the game is, right? I think at this point, you understand what Octopath Traveler is. You either really like it or you're indifferent or you just aren't that into it. You don't like that the stories don't connect necessarily. Maybe you don't like the art style. Maybe you just don't like turn-based RPGs. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think what this game does is it signifies that more of these kind of titles, not necessarily having to be the 2D sprite style, but more of these JRPGs, more of these turn-based JRPGs, just JRPGs in general, need to start coming to Switch. I actually want to give a shout out quickly to Player Essence, who did a sales update video, of course, similar to this, talking about how it crossed 1 million in sales. And I know someone's going to argue about shipped, but I mean, Nintendo and Square already made their money. So, and considering how hard it is to still find this game, even in some places in the United States, I would assume that most of those they've shipped are already off store shelves. They can't even keep up with demand in Japan. They're not even doing a full restock till August, or sometime this month, I should say. It is August, I guess, now. Reality is that I think that there's a pathway now for even more of these kind of games to come. If you are making an RPG in Japan, whether it's an action RPG, whether it's a traditional turn-based RPG, I don't know really what the excuse at this point can be to not bring to the Switch. And I know I could talk about something like Kingdom Hearts 3. That's obviously an RPG I would love to see come to Switch. I would love to see that come to Switch with a Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 collection, or at least maybe even a collection of all of them, including all the handheld ones. I think that would be fantastic. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think that them not doing it is really missing out on an opportunity on Switch. No, Octopath Traveler it wasn't Final Fantasy 15, right? Like Final Fantasy 15 during its launch week sold 5 million units across all the platforms it was on. 5 million. That's obviously an impressive figure with PlayStation 4, Xbox, and PC. And I wish that, we don't know what Octopath Traveler would have done, of course, if it was multi-platform. Maybe it would have also sold 5 million. But it definitely shows there's an audience for these games. So not only do I want to see Final Fantasy 15 finally get the port, over that it, that I think Switch owners would like to see. I also think that if you're making a JRPG, if you're not considering the Switch as a primary platform for that game moving forward, because I think they needed a test case, right? Like, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 did well, but again, Nintendo, a game developed by a Nintendo studio, a wholly owned studio, Nintendo published, Nintendo promoted. Yes, Octopath Traveler also got promotion for being an exclusive, of course, and there are benefits to being an exclusive on a platform, i.e. the platform holder is more likely to promote your game if it is exclusive. I do think if Final Fantasy 15 or Kingdom Hearts 3 or any other major JRPG wanted to come to Switch, Nintendo would be all on top of the hype train for that and pushing it hardcore to their audience like they did with Doom, like they did with Wolfenstein. We've seen Nintendo do this with multi-platform games. They did it with Dark Souls Remastered. Remember, Dark Souls Remastered was initially announced for Switch, and now obviously Switch is the platform that doesn't have it yet, but that's besides the point. Nintendo's willing to advertise these massive games. So I would like to see Octopath Traveler be that beacon of light that says, yes, not only do we need more old school style games like this made in a AAA way, we need just more of these JRPGs in general. Now, I don't have the time in my life to play all the JRPGs like I used to when I was a kid, but I still want to see these come over. There's clearly a massive audience for it here. Now, someone out there is going to try to call me out and be like, hey, Octopath Traveler sold 1 million units, so that's a system seller, and blah, 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 blah. What about your last video? And I'm going to have some responses from my prior video that I did on, Nintendo dropping the ball with Switch this year. I'm going to have a nice Prime Comments video this Sunday that you guys should definitely check out. But I think that just because this game sold 1 million, I think this game overall lifetime sales, I think it's going to get to about 2.5 million. I know some people are more bullish. They think it'll hit 4. They think it'll hit 5. I don't know that it's going to do that. Obviously, lifetime, we're talking years and years and years of projections on sales, price drops, sales on the eShop, all that stuff. I don't think it has that kind of legs. I don't think JRPGs in general have those sorts of legs. I've been looking at sales data all morning, just pouring through sales data for different JRPGs to see how impressed I should be by this. And yes, I should be extremely impressed. But JRPGs tend to not have a long tail of sales. So it'll be interesting to see if this is going to be the game that bucks that trend. I think it can cross 2 million units. One, because the physical version's been undersupplied, so I think they're going to get at least another 500 or 600,000 sales just off physical over the next year. And then I think digital sales are going to pick up as well somewhere in there. And we're going to see over 2 million, maybe 2.5, which is a massive success story for a game like this. Like, this is a game that clearly has already made its development money back along, many, many sales ago, and it has blown up, and I'm happy for it. But again, just because it's done well, I don't think it's necessarily a system seller, because even though obviously Switch sales have risen, I know that there was some supply constraints and all that stuff, but it doesn't matter what the reason really is. Reality is that Switch sales themselves didn't necessarily blow up because of the game. They more so increased a little bit, and they're kind of sort of slowly drip feeding down, at least from what we can see in Japan. We don't really have sales figures for really any other country when it comes to Switch. We're not going to really know what the impact was for July until really the beginning of September. Anyways, if you saw the title, it obviously said Octopath Traveler might be the biggest Switch success story, or Switch's biggest success story. And it's not because it's the game that's sold the best. Obviously, we talk about Odyssey. We can talk about Zelda being the best-selling Zelda of all time, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 being the best-selling Xenoblade game of all time, or the best-selling Monolith Soft game of all time. There's a lot of success stories on Switch. That's why me saying, or at least it feels like me saying Octopath Traveler might be the biggest, is a really big deal, because not only because it might be my favorite game on Switch outside of Breath of the Wild, and I don't consider Breath of the Wild a wholly Switch game. It's a Wii U game that was ported to Switch, launched at the same time. That's not a knock on Breath of the Wild, by the way. It's my favorite game of all time, but it's not exclusive to the platform. So, and by the way, I don't actually think games need to be exclusive to platforms. I love exclusive games, don't get me wrong, but the more people that get to play a game, the better in my book. Doesn't affect me. So, anyways, Octopath Traveler is just that game that I don't think people thought would do this well. It is the game that might be the riskiest so far. It's a new IP. Yes, it's a JRPG, but it's a JRPG built with a lot of love and care, but done differently with these 8 individual stories. Yes, they're individual stories, done in a way where, yes, the gameplay might be fantastic, but it's kind of got that retro appeal, maybe a little new age appeal. There was a lot of people knocking the game heading into launch just because there's no way in heck a game like this can perform these sorts of numbers. And here we have this game really paving the path for future JRPGs on the platform. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. Let me know whether you think Octopath Traveler is the Switch's biggest success story. For all we know, maybe it's already outsold Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Again, we don't really have sales data for that game. We don't really have sales data for any game made by third parties until now. This is one of the first time we have a true blue update. And if we want to think about it, this game might maybe even by now, because these sales figures are going to be as of, a certain date. They're not going to be current as of literally the time of this video. But maybe it's already getting up close to what Mario Tennis Aces has done. Maybe it's getting up close to what Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has done, that 1.4 range. It's possible that this game is right there. And while it's not going to be listed on Nintendo's website as bestsellers, because Nintendo only lists Nintendo-controlled games, not just published, but Nintendo-developed games. So, like, as an example, Nintendo might, develop Hyrule Warriors, or published Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, but even if that crossed 1 million, that's not going to make Nintendo's million-seller list. You're going to have to find a third-party website that's willing to list all the games that we know have crossed 1 million on Switch, because I think there's been some other games that have actually done this as well from third parties that we're not aware of. I think I heard that Puyo Puyo Tetris might be one of them. Super Bomberman R might be one of them that's also crossed 1 million. So there's been a lot of million sellers on Switch, and it's one of the reasons that Switch's sales kind of maintain themselves. Yes, I talked about how Switch's sales have started to trickle down and not nosedive. Nosedive is way too strong, but obviously have not maintained the highs that they've gotten with some of the Odysseys of the world. But games like this do help keep the sales market healthy enough to still move, at least around 2 million units per quarter. We just need to see what happens next. I want to see this game lead to 2019 having a bunch of JRPG announcements. And there's still more JRPGs to come on Switch. Don't forget about Valkyrie Chronicles 4 coming soon. Anyways, folks, I'm Nathaniel Rovajans from Nintendo Prime, and if you like this video, you know what to do. And if you dislike the video, that's all right. Hit that dislike button. Subscribe for more content, and I will catch all of you guys in the next one.